looking at the American market, you would have expected it to open sharply in the negative after that unemployment figure was released, showing the unemployment rate shooting up to a 26.5-year high of 10.2%. Why did the US market open in positive territory?
All right, let's first address that point. Initially, well, they expected 9.9% and came as a surprise of 10.2%. The market got absolutely hammered. You should have seen it. It was a straight drop on the Dow. It subsequently found a base there and started moving up. Now, what I've heard from some of the US traders saying is that they can't understand why people would be punishing the stock market in the case of the economy weakening to a slight extent. What they are asking, the big question is, where are you going to put your money as an investor? Are you going to put it in the money market where you're going to earn 0.25% return per year? I don't think that's the wisest decision, and subsequently the market has picked up again. I think largely driven by gold as well. Gold futures, the near-date futures, went over $1,100. I think as I left the office, I heard somebody shout out gold at $1,101 an ounce. So that is very good for gold. Unfortunately, our gold stock's not really following the trend. Earlier the week, we saw a lot of fluctuations in the gold stocks, but settling down a bit today. Anglo Gold traded up slightly, but I think the rand is the main barrier there for larger movements.
Now let's look at the JSE All-Share. It's trading close to its year high. If you look at it over the week, it's flat. It has been tap dancing. You know, it's one step forward, two steps back. Do you believe the market has rallied too much? Do you think it's reached its peak, or do you think it's going to trend higher?
Well, from a short-term perspective, I think our market is, I want to say, oversold to a certain extent. Although it sounds like it's an all-time high, yes, I know it's close to being there. But we've seen a lot of action at current levels. And if you look at specific sectors within the All-Share, I think there's a lot of sectors, especially the banking sector, that's completely oversold. And I think they're showing pretty good value. Stocks like Standard Bank, even First Rand at the moment, looking like great short-term buys.
Now, before we get into those banking stocks, let's just take a look at the retail sector. Consumer-facing businesses under pressure at the moment. Now, we've had trading updates from Truworths this week. We had Foschini coming out with some interim results saying trading conditions for the first half of the year have been difficult and volatile. We've seen their sales haven't even kept up with product inflation. Sales only growing by 1%, product inflation of 8%. How are you playing the retail sector at the moment, and specifically the likes of Foschini and Truworths?
All right. To be honest, those are not the stocks that I would focus on mainly. It's slower movers. In my business, we tend to focus on more shorter-term trades. But approaching the sectors, I would suggest if you're going to trade it, you're going to trade this over a longer period. We got to look at stuff like unemployment figures that came out recently. I think 484,000 people lost their jobs in the third quarter. Now, of course, those are the companies that's going to suffer. We're going to see Foschini and Truworths both take a bit of a thumping. You've got to also look at the seasonal trading coming into Christmas. That's also probably going to affect the share price to a certain extent. Although what I've read, they aren't expecting a massive boom coming into Christmas.
Both retailers saying they expect difficult trading conditions right till the end of the year. So going to be a grim Christmas for retailers. No,
absolutely. I mean, there's more than just that. You could also look at the credit facilities that they post to their clients. You know, those are the kind of things you got to look at. Our consumers are under a lot of strain, and to expand your credit book, I think that should be a wrong move. I know Truworths said that their credit book expanded to, I think, 11% over last quarter, and you know, it raises a few bells for me. They're also building more stores, and they're expanding in that way as well. Although, as you said, they're not really getting the return that they want to. That is a bit of a concern, and not really the stuff that I would dabble in if I had a portfolio.
Now, moving on to the banking sector, Moodys downgrading Standard Bank today because of its exposure to BRIC countries. Ironic, because most people like Standard Bank because of its exposure to emerging markets in Africa. What is your take on this kind of downgrade? And also in light of the fact that we had Nedbank warning that their profits may fall by as much as 35%. So banking stocks also, like the retailers, exposed to consumers and the pressure that they're under at the moment.
Okay, with your comment surrounding Moodys,
yeah.
I mean, if you look at Anglo Gold, last week, we had them, or not Moodys necessarily, but we had a downgrade on Anglo Gold on, I think it was on Monday. It got thrashed, and I think the next day they rated them a buy again. You know, so you've got to take that with a pinch of salt as well. When you talk about Nedbank's earnings, we've seen similar earnings from the other big banks, from Standard Bank and Absa. Maybe not 35%, but you've seen them within the 15 to 25% band. So nothing that I really think they're worth a sell at current levels. I do think they're posting quite good value, and specifically Standard Bank. If you can pick it up below 93, I reckon you're going to see it at 98 again within the next week and a half at most.
Right, now we've run out of time, but just before you go, what investment strategy would you advise to the long-term investor as opposed to a trader at the moment?
I would be long at the moment. I would be long, I would be buying here. Looking at a 6 months view, I'll be long.
Your favorite stocks?
Oh, geez, that's difficult now. As I said, Standard
what's
Bank.
Looking cheap
very
at the
short term.
moment?
Very short term. I reckon Standard Bank's a very good buy. We're also looking at First Rand, as I said, and MTN looks like it wants to recover, maybe push back to 125. Always been a very solid stock.